Hello and welcome back. Today we're going to be looking at the first Bond film in Doctor No. So, for a basic run through of what happens in this movie, let's get started. So this film opens up with the first gun barrel sequence done, I'm sorry, Bob Simmons, but it's pretty terrible, but done by Bob Simmons. And the theme begins to play with all those dots and things. And then we open up with three supposedly blind men, also known as the three blind mice in the theme in the background, crossing the road. We then cut to this gambling game and we meet a man named Strangways who leaves the table and heads over to his car and is then shot by these three inconspicuous blind men, which we now know that are obviously assassins. Then we go to this kind of communications building, and they shoot a correspondent. Poor woman. They then look through these files that this correspondent has, and they find the file including Dr. No. Then we cut to this other setting of these people trying to contact this correspondent that they've obviously lost contact from after they were shot and killed in their location. We then meet Mr. Bond, and he says the iconic Bond, James Bond, to Sylvia Trench. Then, a bit later on, we cut to M, who's obviously summoned James Bond, and, he gets his iconic Walt BBK from, this original Q character, but it's not Q, as I'll get on to explain. And then he gets his mission and all this, and they explain what's going on, and he wants to keep his old Beretta, the gun. And M's like, no, leave it on the desk. So then we cut. There's a lot of time after this. We go to Jamaica. I've obviously skipped over all these car chases and everything because I don't have that in the script. We then meet Felix Leiter at this bar, and Quarrel, obviously, and this owner of the bar, the bartender, Felix Leiter is the American equivalent of 007, James Bond. A bit later on, we head off to Dr. No's island, where we meet Honey Rider, who's like the effective Bond girl in this film. Messed up there. Played by Ursula Andress. Eventually, they are kind of caught by Dr. No's guards. They're like, we're coming over, we're gonna come and get you. That all plays out, and they kill one guard, James Bond does, and then this tank that everyone has this weird superstition in Jamaica that this is a dragon. It's just got these dragon teeth and claws on the side. It's honestly hilarious. And Quarrel and Bond are obviously shooting at this dragon tank, and it eventually just fires out an absolute ton of firepower and just evaporates Quarrel out of existence. So then we kind of cut to them getting off all this radiation, and they are pretty well treated by Dr. No, treated with a lot of hospitality. And then we meet Dr. No, and they're having this dinner, and Bond is like, no, this is no time or place for the girl, so the girl gets kicked out by the guards, and then Dr. No just basically shows off his strength in his arm and his hand, and he's got these metal hands, and he just crushes this orb statue thing in his hand, and it's a pretty shocking thing that somebody can just be this powerful, and it's to show that, obviously Dr. No is the head of the table. Bond is just some stupid policeman, as Dr. No goes on to say. Now, Dr. No obviously believes that Bond may have a relatively good spot inside a Spectre. Now, obviously, we know Bond, and we know that he's not going to accept that spot in Spectre. And as Dr. No says, I am wrong, you are just a stupid policeman. It's an excellent line. So then, Bond is basically just beaten up and chucked in a cell, where he is electrocuted by a fence that he tries to go into these vents, and he gets electrocuted off it. He then manages to get through these vents by simply using his shoes, putting them over his hands and getting into the ventilation. He then starts to notice that the floor in the ventilation is getting hot, and all this water just gushes through this pipe, this tunnel the Bond is inside, and he basically has to hold on so he don't gush through this tunnel. He then manages to escape this tunnel thing, and he goes into this area, and this guard walks past, and he just takes him out, eliminates him. He then dresses up in a hazmat suit, goes into where Dr. No's running this kind of scheme that he's planning, and he basically just destroys everything that's going on there. He Dr. No tries to stop him, but because he's in the acid, and he has metal hands, and he's slippy, and he's trying to climb up this pipe, and he just sinks into this hydrochloric or sulfuric or some sort of acid, or maybe nitric acid, I can't remember. He then goes back, finds Honey Rider, and they basically head off as Dr. No's island and his scheme completely explodes. And they are found by Felix Leiter, who is very pleased to see him, and the film ends. So this is how it's going to work. I'm going to rank the films that I decided to rank in 5 different categories. Now, this is Bond-wise, they'll probably change when I move on to different movies. Now, these categories are action, gadgets, villain, Bond legacy, and my own opinion. So let's just get straight into it. Starting off with the action. The action in this film is kind of fairly limited to the end. Obviously, we do have that car chase scene earlier in the film, and I believe it might be the 3 blind men. Correct me if I'm wrong. But they basically chase Bond through this road, and they go flying off a cliff and explode. But there is other bits of action in the film. At the end, when they find Dr. No, and the whole place explodes. So there's pretty decent action in this film, and I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5 in the action category. All of these are going to be out of 5, by the way, apart from my own personal opinion and the roundup at the end. As where the gadgets are concerned, it's not great. It is not great in this territory. But then again, he does get his iconic Walter PPK. And Q is not in this film. He is nowhere to be found or seen. But you know, I feel I gotta be generous in these categories, and I would feel bad to give it a low rating, which is exactly what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go with a 2 out of 5 because he does get his Walter PPK, and you know it's pretty important in the franchise because basically the gun uses for the entire franchise. But it doesn't have some exploding pocket watch or a dart shooting pen in this film, and he just has his Walter PPK, and he goes completely fine with it. He doesn't need any accessories, whereas he does in other films. So you know, I'm gonna go pretty decent, a 2 out of 5 in this category. Now, as for the villain, I love this film's villain. Joseph Wiseman as Dr. No is phenomenal. He's so menacing. He's just so iconic, and obviously, other films respect this character, this performance so much that you can tell that people are taking this performance and putting it in their own film. He is so intimidating and he is so iconic. He's so important in the franchise. He is like Darth Vader of Star Wars. Not quite as famous because Darth Vader's way more famous than him. But, you know, he's so important because he becomes the threshold that all villains in James Bond need to meet. And again, the performance is just fantastic from Joseph Wiseman, and I'm gonna go with a 4 out of 5 because just fantastic, so menacing, so iconic, so intimidating, absolutely fantastic. And let's now move on to my own opinion. Now, I really do think that this is a fantastic Bond film. I really do. You know, the story, the action, everything is just absolutely fantastic. And it's my opinion. So, I really do love this film. I think it's fantastic. I think it's so important to the Bond franchise as a whole. And it, you know, like Joseph Wiseman, it becomes threshold. This film came out a lot before all these famous Eastwood films and all these new age Liam Neeson films and Tobey Maguire and all these other famous people nowadays. This became all the threshold, kind of, that these films need to meet, because it came out long before all of these were even made. So as taking that in, and taking how brilliant this film is, with all the action, and the villain, and everything, I'm going to give this a 4 out of 5, because of how fantastic it truly is. Let's move on. Now for the final category, the final verdict, really, the real verdict. It's going to be the Bond legacy points. This movie is going to have one of the highest in all legacy, in my opinion. I think it's such an important film, as I've just said, and it's going to have one of the highest in the franchise. I think it's going to be up there with From Russia with Love, Goldfinger, GoldenEye, and Casino Royale in the legacy. I really do, because it, and Spy Love Me, because of how important this film actually is in the franchise. So I'm going to give it a 5 out of 5 in the legacy category. Because it's so important. In not just Bond films, in films in general. Doctor No, so yeah, let's move on. So in conclusion, I think this truly is a fantastic top Bond film. And as for the real verdict of this video, I'm gonna go straight there and I'm just gonna give it a 9 out of 10. Because of all the things I've just described. The villain, the action, the gadgets alright, the Bond legacy, the story, the music, everything is just extraordinary. Absolutely extraordinary. A real verdict is a 9 out of 10. And with that being said, let's wrap up this video. So I hope you have enjoyed this second episode of Real Verdict. And I just want to say that I have a lot planned for this channel. Not just in James Bond. I have at least 27. Should have 28 films and reviews already lined up. I already have 28. That doesn't mean I'm making them yet. Not in the path of making the first one. I'll make them once a week. But we're not just going to have just Bond, it's going to be a variety of content. I have hundreds and hundreds of films that are lined up. We're just doing Bond first, because that's the films I'm interested in right now, and that's what we started off with. If you want, you can feel free to scroll down and like and subscribe. If you do, however, because if you want to see more, make sure you click on subscribe and hit notifications, so you don't miss the brand new videos that are gonna hopefully start popping up pretty frequently on this channel. Yeah, I have a lot planned, and I hope you have seriously enjoyed this video. And I'll see you next time.